Book 11. A Visit to the Land of the Dead. We reached the shore, launched our ship, and set up the mast and sails. We loaded the sheep onto the ship and took our places. Our hearts were heavy, and we couldn't stop weeping. Circe, the powerful and clever goddess, sent us a favorable wind. The wind blew steadily from behind, filling our sails. We adjusted the ship's gear and let the wind and helmsman guide us. All day long, our sails stayed full, and the ship sailed smoothly across the sea. When the sun set and darkness covered the world, we entered the deep currents of the river Oceanus. This was the land and city of the Cimmerians, a people shrouded in mist and darkness. The sun's rays never reached them, not when it rose nor when it set. These poor Cimmerians lived in an endless, gloomy night. Once there, we beached our ship and unloaded the sheep. Then we walked along the banks of Oceanus until we reached the place Circe had told us about. There, Perimedes and Eurylochus held the sheep we would sacrifice. I drew my sword and dug a trench, a cubit long on each side. I poured offerings for all the dead souls. First, I poured honey and milk, then wine, and finally water. I sprinkled white barley meal over it all. I prayed earnestly to the helpless spirits, promising them this: when I returned to Ithaca, I would sacrifice my best barren heifer for them and load the pyre with many good things. I specifically swore that Tiresias would receive a black sheep, the finest in my flock. After I had prayed enough to the dead, I slit the throats of the two sheep, letting their blood flow into the trench. Immediately, ghosts swarmed up from Erebus. There were brides, young bachelors, old men worn out by hard work, maidens whose love had been denied, and brave warriors killed in battle, their armor still stained with blood. They rushed from all directions, circling the trench with strange, eerie screams. The sound made my face turn pale with fear. Seeing the spirits gather, I quickly ordered my men to skin the dead sheep and burn them as offerings. At the same time, I told them to pray to Hades and Persephone. But I remained seated, my sword drawn. I wouldn't let those poor, helpless spirits come near the blood until Tiresias had answered my questions. The first ghost to appear was my comrade, Elpenor. He hadn't been buried yet. We had left his body unmourned and unburied at Circe's house. We had simply been too busy. I felt such pity for him and wept when I saw him.
Elpenor,
I said,
how did you come down to this dark, gloomy place? You've arrived here on foot faster than I have with my ship.
He groaned and replied,
Captain, it was all due to bad luck and my own unbelievable drunkenness. I was sleeping on the roof of Circe's house. I never even thought of using the grand staircase to come down. Instead, I fell right off the roof and broke my neck. That's how my soul came to the house of Hades. Now, I beg you, by all those you've left behind, even if they aren't here with you, by your wife, by the father who raised you as a child, and by Telemachus, the sole hope of your house, please grant my request. I know that once you leave this underworld, you'll sail your ship back to Aeaea. Don't leave without mourning and burying me. If you do, the wrath of the gods might fall upon you. Burn me with whatever armor I have, and build a burial mound for me on the seashore. This way, people in the future will know what an unlucky fellow I was. And plant the oar I used to row with my shipmates when I was alive on top of my grave.
My poor friend,
I said.
I will do everything you've asked.
So we sat there, sharing our sad conversation. I sat on one side of the trench, my sword drawn over the blood, while my comrade's ghost spoke to me from the other. Next, the ghost of my dead mother, Anticlea, daughter of Autolycus, appeared. She had been alive when I left for Troy, and seeing her brought a flood of tears to my eyes. But despite my sorrow, I wouldn't let her approach the blood until I had asked my questions of Tiresias. Then came the ghost of Tiresias of Thebes, holding his golden staff. He recognized me and spoke.
Odysseus, noble son of Laertes, why, you poor man, have you left the light of day to visit the dead in this sorrowful place? Step back from the trench and put away your sword. Let me drink the blood, and I will answer your questions truthfully.
I stepped back and sheathed my sword. As soon as he drank the blood, he began his prophecy. He said,
You want to know about your journey home. But the gods will make that path very difficult for you. It will be hard to escape the wrath of Poseidon, who still holds a deep grudge against you for blinding his son. Still, after much suffering, you might reach home if you can control yourself and your companions when your ship arrives at Thrinacia. On that island, you will find the sheep and cattle belonging to Helios, the sun god, who sees and hears everything. If you leave these flocks unharmed and focus only on getting home, you may yet reach Ithaca after many hardships. But if you harm them, I warn you, both your ship and your men will be destroyed. Even if you yourself escape, you will return in a terrible state, having lost all your men, and on another man's ship. And you will find great trouble in your own house. Arrogant, disrespectful men will be squandering your wealth. They will be devouring your property under the pretense of courting your wife and offering her gifts. When you return home, you will take revenge on these suitors. After you have dealt with them in your house, whether by force or trickery, you must take a well-made oar and keep walking with it on your shoulder. Walk until you reach a land where the people have never heard of the sea, where they don't even mix salt with their food, and know nothing of ships or oars, which are like the wings of a ship. At that point, you will receive a clear sign that you cannot miss. A traveler will meet you and ask if what you carry on your shoulder is a winnowing shovel. There, you must plant the oar in the ground and sacrifice a ram, a bull, and a boar to Poseidon. Then, return home and offer grand sacrifices to all the gods in heaven, one after another. Your own death will come from the sea, and your life will gently fade away when you are full of years and at peace. Your people will bless you. All that I have foretold will come true.
That
I replied.
must be as the heavens wish. But please, tell me the truth. My poor mother's ghost is here beside us. She sits by the blood, silent, and though I am her own son, she doesn't recognize me or speak to me. Sir, how can I make my mother know me?
That,
He said.
I can tell you quickly. Any spirit you allow to taste the blood will speak with you like a living, rational being. But if you don't give them blood, they will simply vanish again.
After finishing his prophecies, Tiresias' ghost returned to the house of Hades. I remained seated until my mother came forward and tasted the blood. Immediately, she recognized me and spoke to me fondly.
My son, how did you come down to this dark dwelling while still alive? It's a difficult thing for the living to see these places. Between us and this place are vast, terrifying waters, and the river Oceanus, which no one can cross on foot. You must have a good ship to make the journey. Have you been trying all this time to find your way home from Troy? Have you still not returned to Ithaca or seen your wife in your own house?
Mother,
I said.
I was forced to come here to seek advice from the ghost of Tiresias, the prophet of Thebes. I haven't even been near Achaea or set foot on my homeland. From the very first day I set out with Agamemnon for Ilion, the land of noble horses, to fight the Trojans. It has been an endless string of misfortunes. But please, tell me the truth. How did you die? Did you suffer from a long illness? Or did the gods grant you a gentle, peaceful journey to eternity? Tell me also about my father and the son I left behind. Is my property still in their hands, or has someone else taken possession of it, believing I won't return to claim it? And tell me again what my wife intends to do, and what is in her heart. Does she live with my son, guarding my estate securely, or has she found the best match she could and remarried?
My mother replied.
Your wife still remains in your house, but her heart is heavy with sorrow, and she weeps day and night. No one has yet taken possession of your fine property, and Telemachus still holds your lands undisturbed. He must entertain guests lavishly, as is expected of his position as a magistrate, and because everyone invites him. Your father stays at his old country home and never goes near the town. He has no comfortable bed or bedding. In winter, he sleeps on the floor by the fire with the servants, dressed in rags. But in summer, when the warm weather returns, he sleeps in the vineyard on a bed of vine leaves scattered on the ground. He grieves constantly over your never returning home, and he suffers more and more as he grows older. As for my own death, it happened like this. The gods did not take me swiftly and painlessly in my own house, nor was I struck down by any common illness that wears people out and kills them. It was simply my intense longing to know what you were doing, and the powerful force of my love for you, that led me to my death.
I tried to find a way to embrace my poor mother's ghost. 3 times I rushed toward her, trying to wrap my arms around her, but each time she slipped through my embrace like a dream or a phantom. Heartbroken, I spoke to her.
Mother, why don't you stay still when I try to embrace you? If we could hold each other, we might find some sad comfort in sharing our sorrows, even here in the house of Hades. Is Persephone mocking me with a mere phantom, trying to burden me with even greater grief?
My mother answered.
My son, most ill-fated of all mortals, it is not Persephone who is deceiving you. All people are like this when they are dead. The sinews no longer hold the flesh and bones together. As soon as life leaves the body, all these things vanish in a fierce, consuming fire, and the soul flits away like a dream. Now, return to the light of day as quickly as you can. Remember all these things well, so you can tell them to your wife later.
As we spoke, Persephone soon sent up the ghosts of the wives and daughters of all the most famous men. They gathered in crowds around the blood, and I wondered how I could question them one by one. In the end, I decided it would be best to draw the sharp sword hanging by my sturdy thigh and prevent them from all drinking the blood at once. So they came forward one after another, and each one, as I questioned her, told me her lineage and family. The first ghost I saw was Tyro. She was the daughter of Salmoneus and the wife of Cretheus, son of Aeolus. She had fallen in love with the river Enopeus, the most beautiful river in the world. One day, as she was walking by the river as usual, Poseidon, disguised as her lover, lay with her at the river's mouth. A huge blue wave rose like a mountain, covering both the woman and the god. Poseidon then loosened her virgin girdle and put her into a deep sleep. After the god had completed his act of love, he took her hand and said,
Tyro, rejoice in all good fortune. The embraces of the gods are never in vain. About 12 months from now, you will give birth to splendid twins. Take great care of them. I am Poseidon. Now go home, but keep silent and tell no one.
Poseidon dove beneath the waves, and soon after, she gave birth to Peleus and Neleus. Both sons served Zeus with all their hearts. Peleus became a great sheep breeder in Iolcus, while Neleus lived in Pylos. Her other children, born to Cretheus, were Ezon, Pheres, and Amithaon, a formidable warrior and charioteer. Next, I saw Antiope, daughter of Asopus. She proudly spoke of being embraced by Zeus himself, and with him, she bore 2 sons, Amphion and Zethus. They founded Thebes, the city of 7 gates, and built a mighty wall around it. Even though they were powerful heroes, they couldn't truly protect Thebes until it was fortified. After that, I saw Alcmena, Amphitrion's wife. She, too, bore a son to Zeus, the invincible hero Heracles. I also saw Megara, daughter of the great king Creon, who married Amphitrion's brave son, Heracles. I also saw the beautiful Epicaste, King Oedipus's mother. She was cursed with the terrible fate of marrying her own son, unknowingly. Oedipus had killed his father, then married his mother. But the gods revealed the entire truth to the world. Oedipus remained king of Thebes, but lived in deep sorrow, tormented by the god's curse. Epicaste, unable to bear her grief, hanged herself and went to the house of Hades, the mighty ruler of the underworld. Avenging spirits constantly tormented Oedipus for the insult to his mother, and he lived a life of bitter regret. Next, I saw Chloris. Neleus married her for her beauty, offering priceless gifts to win her hand. She was the youngest daughter of Amphion, son of Iasus and king of Minion Orchomenus, and she became queen of Pylos. She bore Nestor, Chromius, and Periclymenus. She also gave birth to the astonishingly beautiful Pero, sought by suitors from all over the land. However, Neleus declared he would only give Pero to the man who could steal Iphicles' cattle from the pastures of Phylace. This was an incredibly difficult task. Only one person dared to attempt it, a brilliant prophet. But fate was against him. The cattle herders caught him and threw him in prison. A year passed, and when the same season returned, Iphicles released him, but only after the prophet had revealed all the gods' prophecies. And so, the will of Zeus was fulfilled. I also saw Leda, wife of Tyndareus. She bore him 2 famous sons, Castor, the horse tamer, and Pollux, the mighty boxer. These 2 heroes are buried beneath the earth, yet they are still alive. By a special grace from Zeus, they eternally alternate between death and life, one day dying and the next reborn. They hold the status of gods. After her, I saw Iphimedeia, wife of Olyus. She boasted of being embraced by Poseidon. She bore 2 sons, Odysseus and Ephialtes, but both were short-lived. They were the most magnificent and handsome children ever born, second only to Orion. At just 9 years old, they were 9 fathoms tall, and their chests measured 9 cubits around. They declared war on the Olympian gods. They tried to stack Mount Ossa on top of Mount Olympus, and Mount Pelion on top of Ossa, hoping to climb all the way to heaven. If they had lived to adulthood, they surely would have succeeded. But Apollo, son of Leto, killed them both before a single hair had grown on their cheeks or chins. Next, I saw Phaedra, Procris, and Ariadne, the beautiful daughter of the sorcerer Minos. Theseus was taking her from Crete to Athens. But Theseus never truly had her. Before he could, the goddess Artemis killed her on the island of Gia because Dionysus had spoken ill of her. I also saw Mera and Clymene, and the hateful Eriphyle, who sold her own husband for gold. But it would take me all night to name every single wife and daughter of heroes I saw. It's time for me to go to bed, either on my ship with my crew or here. As for my escort home, the gods and you yourselves will see to it. Odysseus finished his story. The guests, sitting in the covered hall, were completely captivated and speechless. Then Queen Arete spoke to them.
People of Phaeacia, what do you think of this man? Isn't he tall and handsome, and so clever? It's true he is my guest, but this honor extends to all of you. Do not be in a hurry to send him away, and don't be stingy with gifts for someone in such great need. After all, the heavens have blessed all of you with great abundance.
The oldest hero among them, Echeneus, spoke up.
My friends,
He said,
our noble queen has just spoken words that are both reasonable and fitting. So, let us be persuaded by them. However, the final decision, in both word and deed, rests with King Alcinous.
King Alcinous exclaimed.
It shall be done, as surely as I live and rule over Phaeacia. Our guest is eager to return home, but we must convince him to stay with us until tomorrow. By then, I will have gathered all the gifts I intend to give him. His escort will be a responsibility for all of you, and especially for me, as your leader.
Odysseus answered.
King Alcinous, if you commanded me to stay here for a full 12 months, and then sent me off, laden with your generous gifts, I would gladly obey. It would be a great advantage to me. When I return to Ithaca, I could bring more to my people, and everyone who sees me would respect and love me even more.
Alcinous replied.
Odysseus, none of us who have seen you believe you are a charlatan or a trickster. I know there are many who tell such convincing stories that it's hard to tell truth from lies. But your way of speaking assures me of your good character. What's more, you've told the story of your own misfortunes and those of the Argives like a seasoned bard. But tell me honestly, did you see any of the great heroes who went to Troy with you and died there? The night is still long, and it's not yet time for bed. So please, continue your incredible story. If you keep telling us your adventures, I could sit here and listen until tomorrow morning.
Odysseus answered.
King Alcinous, there is a time for speaking and a time for sleep. However, since you wish it so strongly, I cannot refuse to tell you the even sadder tale of my comrades. They did not die fighting the Trojans, but perished on their journey home, betrayed by a wicked woman.
After Persephone sent the female spirits away in all directions, the ghost of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, approached me, a sorrowful figure surrounded by those who had died with him in Aegisthus's house. As soon as he tasted the blood, He recognized me. He wept bitterly and stretched out his arms to embrace me, but he had no strength or form left. I, too, wept and felt pity as I watched him. I asked,
King Agamemnon, how did you meet your death? Did Poseidon stir up winds and waves to overwhelm you at sea? Or did your enemies kill you on land while you were stealing cattle or sheep, or fighting to defend your wives and city?
He answered,
Odysseus, noble son of Laertes, I was not lost at sea in a storm raised by Poseidon, nor did my enemies kill me on land. Aegisthus and my wicked wife conspired to kill me. He invited me to his house for a feast, then butchered me miserably, like a fat animal in a slaughterhouse. My comrades around me were slaughtered like sheep or pigs for a nobleman's wedding feast, picnic, or grand banquet. You must have seen countless men die in great battles or single combat, but you never witnessed anything as truly pitiful as how we fell in that hall. Mixing bowls and laden tables lay scattered everywhere, and the ground was soaked with our blood. I heard Priam's daughter Cassandra scream as Clytemnestra killed her right beside me. I lay dying on the ground, a sword in my body, and reached out to kill that murderous harlot, but she slipped away. She wouldn't even close my lips or eyes as I died. There is nothing in this world as cruel and shameless as a woman who has fallen into such guilt. Imagine, murdering her own husband. I thought I would be welcomed home by my children and servants, but her abominable crime has brought disgrace not only upon herself but upon all women who come after, even the good ones.
I said,
Truly, Zeus seems to have hated the house of Atreus from beginning to end because of the schemes of its women. Look how many of us fell for Helen's sake. And now it seems Clytemnestra plotted mischief against you too, during your absence.
Agamemnon continued,
So, be careful. Don't be too open even with your own wife. Don't tell her everything you know. Tell her only some things, and keep the rest to yourself. Not that your wife, Odysseus, is likely to murder you, for Penelope is a truly admirable woman with a very good nature. When we left for Troy, she was a young bride with a baby at her breast. That child must surely be a grown man now, and he and his father will have a joyful meeting and embrace, as they should. But my wicked wife didn't even allow me the joy of seeing my son, she killed me before I could. And I'll tell you one more thing, take it to heart, when you bring your ship to Ithaca, don't announce your arrival. Go secretly, like a surprise attack. After all I've been through, I know women cannot be trusted. But now, tell me truly, do you have any news of my son Orestes? Is he in Orchomenus, or Pylus, or with Menelaus in Sparta? I assume he is still alive.
I replied,
Agamemnon, why do you ask me that? I don't know if your son is alive or dead. It's not right to speak carelessly about things I don't know.
As we sat there, weeping and talking sadly, the ghost of Achilles approached us, accompanied by Patroclus, Antilochus, and Ajax. Ajax was the finest and most handsome of all the Danaans, second only to Achilles, son of Peleus. Achilles recognized me, and spoke with a mournful voice.
Odysseus, noble son of Laertes.
He said,
What daring feat brings you down to the house of Hades, among us powerless dead, who are merely the shadows of those who can no longer toil?
I replied,
Achilles, son of Peleus, greatest hero of the Achaeans, I came to consult Tiresias, hoping he could advise me on my journey back to Ithaca. I haven't even come close to Achaean land, nor have I set foot in my homeland. I've been in constant trouble. But Achilles, no one has ever been as fortunate as you, nor will anyone ever be. When you were alive, all of us Argives adored you. And even here, among the dead, you are treated like a great prince. So, don't be too sad just because you are dead.
Achilles replied,
Don't speak favorably of death. I would rather be a hired servant in a poor man's house, alive on earth, than be king of kings among the dead. But tell me, give me news about my son. Has he gone to war? Is he a great soldier, or not? Also, tell me if you've heard anything about my father, Peleus. Does he still rule the Myrmidons? Or, now that he's old and his body is weak, do people throughout Hellas and Phthia no longer respect him? If only I could stand by his side, even for a single day, with the same strength I had when I killed the bravest of our enemies on the plains of Troy. If I could just go to his house, anyone who tried to harm him or take his place would quickly regret it.
I replied,
I've heard nothing about Peleus, but I can tell you everything about your son, Neoptolemus, because I brought him from Syros on my own ship with the Achaeans. In our war councils before Troy, he was always the first to speak, and his judgment was flawless. Only Nestor and I could surpass him. When battles raged on the plains of Troy, he never stayed behind his men. Instead, he charged far ahead, the bravest of them all. He killed countless enemies. I can't list every single person he slew while fighting for the Argives, but I can tell you how he killed the valiant hero Eurypylus, son of Telephus. Eurypylus was the most handsome man I ever saw, except for Memnon. Many other Cedians also fell around him because of a woman's bribes. Furthermore, when all the bravest Argives entered the horse that Epeus had built, it was my job to decide when we should open or close the door of our ambush. At that time, all the other Danaan leaders and chief men were wiping away tears and trembling all over. But I never once saw him turn pale or wipe a tear from his cheek. He constantly gripped the hilt of his sword and his bronze-tipped spear, breathing fury against the enemy, urging me to burst out from the horse. Yet, when we plundered Priam's city, he boarded his ship with a generous share of the spoils, without a single wound, neither from a thrown spear nor in close combat. For the rage of Ares, the god of war, is unpredictable.
When I finished speaking, the ghost of Achilles strode across a meadow filled with asphodel flowers. He was clearly delighted by my tale of his son's bravery. The ghosts of other dead men gathered around me, each eager to tell their own sad story. But the ghost of Ajax, son of Telamon, kept his distance. He was still angry with me for winning the dispute over Achilles' armor. Thetis had offered the armor as a prize, and Trojan prisoners along with the goddess Athena had been the judges. Oh, how I wish I had never won that contest. It cost Ajax his life. He was the most outstanding hero among the Danaans, second only to Achilles, son of Peleus, in both stature and bravery. When I saw him, I tried to calm him, saying,
Ajax, can you not forget and forgive, even in death? Does the judgment over that hateful armor still torment you? Losing such a strong pillar as you were was a terrible loss for us Argives. We mourned you as deeply as we mourned Achilles, son of Peleus himself. The blame for all this lies with the malice Zeus held against the Danaans. It was his spite that led to your destruction. So, come closer, calm your proud spirit, and listen to what I have to tell you.
He gave no answer, but turned away into Erebus, the darkness of the underworld, joining the other ghosts. Even though he was so angry, I should have made him talk to me, or at least kept speaking to him. However, I couldn't, because there were still other dead souls I wished to see. Then I saw Minos, son of Zeus, holding a golden scepter and judging the dead. In the vast house of Hades, ghosts gathered around him, sitting and standing, waiting to hear his verdicts. Next, I saw the mighty Orion. In a meadow full of asphodel flowers, he was herding the ghosts of the wild beasts he had hunted in the mountains. In his hand, he carried a massive bronze club, unbreakable forever. Then I saw Tityus, son of Gaia. He lay stretched out on the plain, his enormous body covering about 9 acres of ground. On either side of him, 2 vultures dug their beaks into his liver. Tityus tried to swat them away with his hands, but it was useless. This was his punishment for violating Leto, Zeus's lover, as she passed through Panopeus on her way to Pytho. I also witnessed the terrible fate of Tantalus. He stood in a lake that reached his chin. He was dying of thirst, but could never reach the water. Whenever the poor man bent down to drink, the water would dry up and vanish, leaving only parched ground, cursed by the heavens. Above his head, tall trees dangled their fruit. There were pears, pomegranates, apples, sweet figs, and juicy olives. But whenever the poor man reached out to grab some, the wind would whip the branches back up into the clouds. And then I saw Sisyphus. He was in endless torment, straining with both hands to push a massive stone. He used his hands and feet, struggling to roll the boulder to the top of the hill. But always, just before he could push it over to the other side, its immense weight would overwhelm him. Then the relentless stone would thunder back down to the plain. He would start pushing the stone uphill again, sweat pouring off him, and steam rising behind him. Next, I saw the mighty Heracles, or rather, his phantom. The true Heracles feasts forever with the immortal gods, having taken the beautiful Hebe, daughter of Zeus and Hera, as his wife. Ghosts shrieked around him, scattering like frightened birds. He held his bow in his hand, an arrow notched to the string, and glared around him, dark as night, ready to shoot at any moment. Around his chest was a wondrous golden belt, amazingly adorned with bears, wild boars, and lions with gleaming eyes. Scenes of war, battle, and death were also etched into the belt. The craftsman who made that belt, no matter how hard he tried, could never create another like it. Heracles recognized me at once and spoke with pity.
"My poor Odysseus, noble son of Laertes,"
he said.
"Are you also living the same miserable life I endured when I was on earth? I was the son of Zeus, yet I suffered endlessly, becoming a slave to someone far beneath me, a lowly fellow who set me all sorts of grueling tasks. That base man gave me all kinds of missions. He even sent me here once to fetch the hellhound. He thought there could be no harder task, but with the help of Hermes and Athena, I dragged the hound out of Hades' realm and brought it to him."
After saying this, Heracles descended back into the house of Hades. I remained where I was, hoping that other mighty dead heroes might approach me. I longed to see others who had passed on, glorious children of the gods like Theseus and Pirithous. However, thousands upon thousands of ghosts swarmed around me, uttering appalling cries. I was seized with panic, fearing that Persephone might send up the head of the dreadful monster Gorgon from the house of Hades. At once, I rushed back to my ship and ordered my men to board immediately and cast off the ropes. They quickly boarded and took their places, and the ship sailed down the stream of the river Oceanus. We had to row at first, but soon a fair wind sprang up. Book 12. The Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, and the Sun God's Cattle. After leaving the river Oceanus and sailing into the vast open sea, we finally reached the island of Aea. Just like everywhere else, the sun rose and set there. We pulled our ship onto the sandy beach and disembarked. There, we fell asleep, waiting for the new day to dawn. When Eos, the rosy-fingered goddess of dawn, appeared, I sent some of my men to Circe's house to retrieve Elpenor's body. We cut firewood from a forest near the headland that jutted out into the sea. After weeping and mourning for Elpenor, we performed his funeral rites. Once his body and armor had turned to ash, we built a cairn and placed a stone upon it. At the very top of the cairn, we fixed the oar he used to row. While we were doing all this, Circe, who knew we had returned from the house of Hades, dressed herself and came to us as quickly as she could. Her maidservants came with her, bringing us bread, meat, and wine. She stood among us and said,
"You've done something incredibly bold, venturing alive into the house of Hades. Most people die once, but you've faced death twice. So, stay here for the rest of the day and feast to your heart's content. Then, at daybreak tomorrow, you can set sail again. In the meantime, I will explain everything about your journey ahead to Odysseus, so you won't suffer any misfortune, whether on land or at sea."
We agreed to her words and feasted all day long until the sun went down. When the sun set and darkness fell, my men laid down by the stern cables of the ship and fell asleep. Then Circe took my hand and asked me to sit apart from the others. She reclined beside me and questioned me about all our adventures.
"You've done well so far,"
she said when I finished my story.
"And now, pay close attention to what I'm about to tell you. The heavens themselves will help you remember it. First, you will encounter the sirens, who enchant everyone who comes near them. If anyone carelessly sails too close and hears their song, his wife and children will never welcome him home again. They sit in a green field, singing him to his death with their sweet voices. All around them are piles of rotting corpses and bones. So, When you pass the sirens, stop your men's ears with wax so no one can hear their song. But if you wish, you can listen yourself. Have your men bind you upright to the mast's crosspiece, halfway up. They must lash the ends of the rope tightly to the mast itself. Then you can enjoy listening to their song. If you beg and plead for them to untie you, they must bind you even tighter. When your crew has carried you past these sirens, I cannot give you clear instructions on which of two paths to take. I will lay both choices before you, and you must decide for yourself. On one side, there are towering rocks where Amphitrite's deep blue waves crash with terrifying fury. The blessed gods call these rocks the Wanderers. Not even a single bird can pass through here, not even the timid doves that bring ambrosia to Father Zeus. The sheer rock always snatches one of them, and Zeus must send another to make up their number. No ship that has ever come to these rocks has returned. The waves and fiery whirlpools are filled with wreckage and the bodies of dead men. The only vessel that ever sailed through was the famous Argo, on her way back from King Eet's house. Even she would have been dashed against these mighty rocks, but the goddess Hera guided her past them out of love for Jason. One of these two rocks reaches up to the sky, its peak always hidden by a dark cloud. This cloud never leaves it, so the summit is never clear, not even in summer or early autumn. No man, even with 20 hands and 20 feet, could find a foothold and climb it, for it's a sheer cliff, as smooth as if it had been polished. In the middle of this rock, there's a large cavern facing west, towards Erebus, the darkness of the underworld. You must steer your ship this way, but the cave is so high up that not even the strongest archer could shoot an arrow into it. Inside sits Scylla. She yelps like a young hound, but in truth, she's a dreadful monster. Not even a god could face her without being struck by terror. She has 12 hideous feet and 6 incredibly long necks. At the end of each neck is a frightful head, and each head has 3 rows of teeth, set so close together that they can crush anyone to death in an instant. She sits deep within her shadowy cave, thrusting out her heads and peering around the rock, trying to snatch dolphins, dogfish, or any larger monster from the countless creatures that teem in Amphitrite's waters. No ship has ever passed her without losing some men. She shoots out all her heads at once, snatching a man with each mouth. The other rock lies lower, but they are so close together that there's not even a bowshot's distance between them. A large fig tree, full of lush leaves, grows upon it. And beneath it lies the sucking whirlpool of Charybdis. 3 times a day she vomits forth her waters, and 3 times she sucks them down again. Be careful not to be there when she is sucking them down. If you are, not even Poseidon himself could save you. You must hug the Scylla side and drive your ship past as fast as you can, for it's far better to lose 6 men than your entire crew.
Is there no way
Odysseus asked.
to escape Charybdis and at the same time keep Scylla from harming my men?
The goddess replied.
You reckless man. You're always looking for a fight, unwilling to be defeated even by immortals. But Scylla is not mortal. She is savage, wild, merciless, and invincible. There's no help for it. Your best chance is to get past her as fast as you possibly can. If you linger near her rock, perhaps putting on your armor, she might strike again with her 6 heads and snatch another half dozen of your men. So, drive your ship past her at full speed. And shout out loudly to Cretias, Scylla's mother, and beg her for help. She might then stop Scylla from attacking again. Next, you will reach the island of Thrinacia. There, you will find many herds of cattle and flocks of sheep belonging to the sun god Helios. There are 7 herds of cattle and 7 flocks of sheep, with 50 animals in each. These animals never breed, nor do their numbers ever decrease. The goddesses Phaethusa and Lampade, children of the sun god Hyperion and Neaera, tend to them. Their mother, after bearing and nursing them, sent them to the distant island of Thrinacia to live there and care for their father's flocks and herds. If you leave these animals unharmed and focus only on returning home, you may yet reach Ithaca after much hardship. But if you harm them, I warn you now, both your ship and all your comrades will be destroyed. Even if you yourself escape, you will return late, in a terrible state, having lost all your men."
The goddess finished speaking, and as the golden dawn began to spread across the sky, she returned inland. I then boarded the ship and ordered my men to loose the anchor ropes. They immediately got into the ship, took their places, and began to strike the gray sea with their oars. Soon after, the great and wise goddess Circe sent us a fair wind. The wind blew steadily from behind the ship, filling our sails. We adjusted the ship's gear and sailed on, guided by the wind and the helmsman. Feeling troubled, I spoke to my men.
"My friends, it's not right for me alone to know the prophecies that Circe has given me. So, I will tell you everything so that whether we live or die, we face it with our eyes open. First, the goddess warned us to beware of the sirens, who sit in a field of flowers and sing most beautifully. But she said I might hear them myself, as long as no one else did. Therefore, take me and bind me to the crosspiece halfway up the mast. Bind me upright, with a bond so strong that I cannot possibly break free, and lash the rope's ends to the mast itself. If I beg and plead with you to set me free, then bind me even more tightly."
I had barely finished telling my men everything when we reached the island of the Sirens. The wind had been so favorable. Then, all of a sudden, the sea became dead calm. There wasn't a breath of wind or a ripple on the water. My men furled the sails and stowed them away. Then, taking to their oars, they powerfully rowed, turning the sea white with foam. Meanwhile, I took a large chunk of wax and cut it into small pieces with my sword. Then, with my strong hands, I kneaded the wax until it became soft. The intense rays of the sun god Hyperion helped soften the wax quickly as I worked it. I then stopped the ears of all my men with the wax, and my men bound my hands and feet to the mast as I stood upright on the crosspiece. They continued to row. As we drew closer to the island, reaching a distance where sounds could be heard, and our ship moved swiftly, the sirens saw us approaching the shore and began to sing. The sirens sang,
"Come here, renowned Odysseus. Glory of the Achaeans. Listen to our song. No one has ever sailed past us without stopping to hear the enchanting sweetness of our voices. And whoever listens will not only be charmed but will also become wiser. For we know all the hardships the gods laid upon the Argives and Trojans before Troy, and we can tell you everything that will happen throughout the world."
They sang these words most beautifully. Longing to hear more of their song, I frowned and signaled to my men to set me free. But my men only quickened their stroke. Eurylochus and Paramedes bound me even more tightly until we were out of earshot of the sirens' voices. Once the sirens' voices could no longer be heard, my men removed the wax from their ears and unbound me. Immediately after we passed the island, I saw a colossal wave rising, throwing up spray, and I heard a fierce roaring sound. My men were so terrified that they dropped their oars. The entire sea echoed with the thunderous rush of the waters, but the ship remained still because the men had stopped rowing. So, I went around, encouraging each man not to lose heart. Odysseus said,
"My friends, this is not the first time we've been in danger. This situation is not as desperate as when the Cyclops trapped us in his cave. My courage and wise counsel saved us then, and we will survive this too, living to look back on it all. So now let us all do as I say. Trust in Zeus and row with all your might. And you, helmsman, these are your orders. Pay close attention, for the ship is in your hands. Turn the ship's head away from these steaming rapids and hug the rock closely. Otherwise, the ship will slip away and vanish over there before you know it, and we will all perish."
My crew followed my orders, but I didn't tell them anything about the terrifying monster Scylla. I knew if I had, they would have stopped rowing and huddled in the ship's hold. I only disobeyed Circe's strict instructions in one way. I put on my armor. I grabbed 2 strong spears and stood at the ship's bow. I expected to be the first to see the rock monster that would cause my men so much harm. But no matter how hard I stared, searching the dark rocks again and again, the monster was nowhere to be seen. We entered the straits, filled with great fear. On one side was Scylla, and on the other, the terrifying Charybdis constantly sucked in the salty seawater. When Charybdis spit out the water, it was like a cauldron boiling over a huge fire, and the spray reached the tops of the rocks on both sides. When she started sucking again, we could see the water swirling round and round. The sound of it crashing against the rocks was deafening. The bottom of the whirlpool looked black with sand and mud, and the sailors were out of their minds with terror. While we were transfixed by this horror, thinking each moment might be our last, Scylla suddenly lunged at us and snatched my 6 bravest men. I was watching both the ship and my men at the same time. In an instant, I saw their hands and feet shoot high above my head, flailing in the air as Scylla dragged them away. As she pulled them, they screamed my name in a final, desperate cry. Just as a fisherman, perched on a rock with his spear, baits and snatches small fish, then flings them, gasping, onto the shore, Scylla hauled my gasping men onto her rock and crunched them up at the mouth of her cave. They screamed and reached out to me in their mortal agony. This was the most sickening sight I witnessed in all my voyages. After we passed the wandering rocks, with Scylla and the terrifying Charybdis, we reached the noble island of the sun god Helios, where his fine cattle and sheep grazed. While still at sea in my ship, I could hear the cattle lowing as they returned to their pens and the sheep bleating. Then I remembered what the blind prophet Tiresias of Thebes had told me, and how carefully Circe of A had warned me to avoid the island of the blessed sun god. Deeply worried, I spoke to my men.
My crew, I know how exhausted you are, but listen to the prophecy Tiresias gave me, and how carefully Circe warned me to shun the island of the blessed sun god. She said our greatest danger would come from this very place. So, turn the ship away from the island.
My men despaired at my words. Eurylochus immediately gave me an insolent reply.
Odysseus,
Eurylochus said,
you are cruel. You are so strong yourself, you never get tired, as if you're made of iron. But your men are exhausted from hard labor and lack of sleep. Yet you won't let them land on this island to prepare a good supper. Instead, you order them to sail fruitlessly through the night. Winds blow hardest at night and cause great damage. How can we escape if a sudden squall from the southwest or west strikes us, especially when the gods are against us? Such squalls often wreck ships, don't they? Let's obey the knight's command now. Let's prepare our supper here by the ship. Tomorrow morning, we'll get back on board and set sail.
When Eurylochus finished speaking, the men agreed with him. I knew that the heavens intended to harm us.
You are many, and I am alone.
I said,
You force me to yield, but at least each of you must swear a solemn oath. Promise that if you encounter a herd of cattle or a large flock of sheep, you will not be so mad as to kill a single one. You will be satisfied with the food Circe gave us.
They all swore as I commanded. After they completed their oath, we moored the ship securely in a nearby harbor where a stream of fresh water flowed. The men went ashore and prepared their supper. Once they had enough to eat and drink, they began talking about their poor comrades whom Scylla had snatched and eaten. This made them weep, and they continued crying until they fell into a deep sleep. In the third watch of the night, when the stars had shifted their places, Zeus unleashed a mighty storm. It covered both land and sea with thick clouds, and night seemed to rise from the heavens. When rosy-fingered Dawn, child of morning, appeared, we brought the ship ashore and dragged her into a cave where sea nymphs held their dances. Then I called my men together for a council.
Friends,
I said,
we have meat and drink on the ship, so let's be careful not to touch the cattle. If we do, we will suffer for it. These cattle and sheep belong to the mighty sun god, who sees and hears everything.
They promised again that they would obey. For a whole month, the south wind blew steadily, and no other winds came, only south and east. As long as our grain and wine lasted, the men, though hungry, did not touch the cattle. But once they had eaten everything on the ship, they were forced to go further afield with hooks and lines, catching birds and taking whatever they could find. They were starving. So one day, I went inland to pray to the heavens, asking them to show me a way to leave. When I had gone far enough to be away from all my men, and found a place well sheltered from the wind, I washed my hands and prayed to all the gods on Olympus. Soon after, the gods sent me into a sweet sleep. Meanwhile, Eurylochus was giving the men terrible advice.
Listen to me, my poor comrades.
He said,
All deaths are bad enough, but none is as terrible as starvation. Why shouldn't we drive in the best of these cows and offer them as a sacrifice to the immortal gods? If we ever make it back to Ithaca, we can build a magnificent temple for the sun god and fill it with every kind of treasure. But if he decides to sink our ship in revenge for these horned cattle, and the other gods agree, then I, for one, would rather drink salty seawater once and for all and be done with it, than slowly starve to death on this desolate island.
When Eurylochus finished speaking, the men agreed with him. Not far from the ship, beautiful, sturdy cattle were grazing. The men drove in the best of them. They gathered around the cattle and offered their prayers. Since they had no barley meal, they used young oak shoots instead. After their prayers, they killed the cattle and prepared the meat. They cut out the thigh bones, wrapped them in 2 layers of fat, and placed a few pieces of raw meat on top. They had no wine to pour as an offering while the sacrifice cooked, so they poured a little water from time to time while grilling the entrails. Once the thigh bones were burned and they had tasted the entrails, they cut the remaining meat into small pieces and put them on spits. By this time, my deep sleep had left me, and I returned to the ship and the seashore. As I drew near, the smell of hot, roasting meat hit my nose. I groaned a prayer to the immortal gods.
Father Zeus,
I cried,
and all you other gods who live in everlasting bliss, you have played a cruel trick on me by sending me into this sleep. Look what my men have done in my absence.
Meanwhile, Lampeter immediately ran to the sun god and told him that we had killed his cattle. The sun god flew into a great rage and spoke to the immortal gods.
Father Zeus,
He said,
and all you other gods who live in everlasting bliss, I must have vengeance on Odysseus's crew. They dared to kill my cattle, which I loved most to look upon, whether I was rising into the sky or descending. If they do not pay for what they did to my cattle, I will go down to the world of Hades and shine among the dead. Sun God,
Zeus replied,
continue to shine upon us gods and upon mankind across the fruitful earth. As soon as they put out to sea, I will shatter their ship into tiny pieces with a bolt of white lightning.
Calypso told me this entire story. She said she had heard it from Hermes himself. As soon as I got down to my ship and the seashore, I rebuked each of the men individually. But there was nothing we could do. The cattle were already dead. And indeed, the gods immediately began to show us strange and wondrous signs. The hides of the cattle crawled, and the meat on the spits began to low like cows. Whether cooked or raw, all the meat kept making the sounds of cattle. My men feasted on the best cattle for 6 days. But when Zeus, son of Cronus, added a 7th day, the fury of the gale finally lessened. We boarded the ship, raised our mast, spread the sail, and set out to sea. As soon as we were far from the island, with nothing but sky and sea visible, Zeus, son of Cronus, cast a black cloud over our ship, and the sea beneath us grew dark. We couldn't go much further. A moment later, a terrible squall from the west struck, snapping the forestays of the mast. The mast crashed backward, and all the ship's gear tumbled around the deck. The mast fell directly onto the head of the helmsman in the ship's stern, crushing his skull. He plunged overboard as if diving, with no life left in him. Then Zeus let fly with his thunderbolts. The lightning struck the ship, and it spun around, filling with fire and brimstone. All the men fell into the sea. They floated around the ship like a flock of seagulls, but the gods soon took away any chance they had of returning home. I clung to the ship until the sea tore her sides from the keel, which then drifted alone. The mast broke off and fell towards the keel. But a strong oxhide rope was still attached to the mast, and with this, I lashed the mast and keel together. I climbed onto them and drifted wherever the winds chose to take me. Charybdis's whirlpool. The fierce west wind finally died down, and the wind shifted, blowing from the south. I feared being dragged back into Charybdis's terrible whirlpool, and my fears came true. All night, the waves carried me along. By sunrise, I was back at Scylla's rocks in the swirling vortex. Charybdis was sucking down the salty seawater. I shot high into the air towards the fig tree, clinging to it like a bat. There was no solid ground to stand on. The tree's roots were too far below, and its branches, though huge and spread over the entire whirlpool, were too high and distant for me to reach. So I hung on, patiently waiting for the whirlpool to spit out my mast and raft again. It felt like an eternity. The joy I felt when I finally saw my raft begin to emerge from the whirlpool was far greater than any juror's relief after a long, troublesome trial, finally heading home for dinner. At last, I let go with my hands and feet, dropping hard into the sea. I landed right beside my raft, climbed aboard, and started paddling with my hands. Zeus, father of gods and mortals, kept Scylla from seeing me again. Otherwise, I surely would have died. For 9 days, I drifted across the sea. Then, on the 10th night, by the will of the gods, I reached Ogygia Island. It was the home of the great and powerful goddess Calypso. She welcomed me and took good care of me. But I won't go into more detail about that part of my story. I already told you and your noble wife all about it yesterday, and I truly dislike repeating the same things over and over again.